Hello, 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 everyone.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hummingbird Hour. We're going to give it a couple minutes just to give everyone a chance to join. You know, one of the things that I like to say is I used to work in a physical building, and it was impossible to get from the floor 17 meeting that ended at 2 p.m. and then get to floor 3 and start a meeting at 3 p.m. I thought that would be fixed in the virtual space, but it doesn't get fixed. It's just like I still have to end a meeting and I have to run to the restroom and I have to get back to the meeting. So I'm sure you all feel the pain of the even the virtual world is still logistically has its challenges. And if Nick Reich were here, and he probably will join, who's our president and CEO at Hummingbird, he'd say, so that's why you want to end the meeting at 5 till the hour. So someday I'll listen to Nick's wonderful words of wisdom. Well, again, welcome to Hummingbird Hour. We'll give it just another minute for everyone to join. As always, we invite everyone who's part of our community and joining us for these events to introduce yourself in the chat. Share, maybe feel free to share where you're joining us from. If you want to share what you do or what brings you here, and we always encourage you to share your LinkedIn profiles as well so you can connect with each other. A big part of what we believe in is the power of community and connection, so we encourage you to connect with each other. Happy Tuesday. Lindsay, do you want to come on and say hi and show your mug? Because I want everyone to see your mug. Because it's the best part of my day today.
Of course.
There we go, Wonder Woman. I love it. Thanks, Lindsay. Lindsay's always with us behind the scenes at Hummingbird Hour. Lindsay is our marketing and media manager at Hummingbird Humanity, and she makes sure that Hummingbird Hour goes off without a flaw every month. Even though perfection is not the goal, always progress over perfection. We're always learning and always growing. Okay, well, let's kick off and say hi to everyone and start our Hummingbird Hours. Let me just adjust something on my screen here. So again, welcome to Hummingbird Hour. Happy Tuesday, everyone. We are delighted that you're with us today. My name is Brian McCormick. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the founder and CEO of Hummingbird Hour. I'm also in New York City, so if the noise of the city interrupts me behind the scenes, I hope you'll just accept the joy and the magic that is New York City, and embrace that reality that New York City comes with noise. So I'm really delighted to be here with you all today. I'm super excited about our guest today, which we'll come to in a minute. But I want to do a few housekeeping things first. We have closed captions live, so if you would like to take advantage of that service, please feel free to engage closed captions in the buttons at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We also, again, for those of you who just joined us in the last couple minutes, we invite you all to introduce yourselves in the chat, share where you're calling from, share what you do, share what brought you here, share your LinkedIn profiles so you can connect with each other. We really encourage the community and connection aspects of our time together. So we really encourage you to meet each other and engage in the chat as we're having our conversation with our special guests each month. So let's share a few updates. So first, I want to just remind everyone, or share with everyone in case you didn't know, that we are currently in the midst of Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month, which is from September 15th to October 15th. And one of the things that I wanted to mention here is just to share that there are a few different words that are used to describe the Latinx and Hispanic communities or members of that community, including Latine, Latino, Latina. And so those words are important words to understand, and we are in our efforts to honor and recognize all the members of that community and the different ways that individuals in the community may identify. We have a series of educational posts on our social media channels this month to help provide some additional insight and understanding there. So that way you, when you're interacting with members of the community, can understand the words that they may choose to identify with and meet each person in the way that they would like to be greeted or recognized. So check out our social media channels for Hummingbird on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook if you're not already following us. And in the spirit of Latinx and Hispanic Heritage Month, I want to remind everyone that we have Hummingbird Speaks, which is our speakers bureau. And we have a collection of phenomenal speakers that are professional speakers that share their stories and lived experiences and connect those experiences to diversity, equity, and inclusion work and help organizations use their stories and their knowledge and experience to ignite workplaces where everyone feels welcomed and accepted and recognized for the unique, beautiful individuals they are. And some of our speakers are part of the Hispanic and Latinx community, and you'll see some of them pictured here. So if you are in need of a speaker for your organization or workplace, feel free to reach out to us it's Lindsay's at speaks@hummingbirdhumanity.com.
Correct.
Yep, you can email us at the email address is speaks@hummingbirdhumanity.com, and we'll help you book a speaker for your organization. Next month, we have Yvette Donato and Frank Gomez joining us for Hummingbird Hour on October 18th. And they're going to join us to talk about the multi-generational and multi-ethnic workplace. And that Hummingbird Hour, I will be in the audience with all of you that day, while Travis Rivera, who's our special guest today, will be filling in for me as the host of Hummingbird Hour. So I hope you'll join us next month for that great conversation. And today we have with us Travis Rivera, who wrote his book, Drafts: An Imperfect Collection of Writing. So Mark, this is I have so many things I want to say about Mark because I'm a big Mark fan. So first I want to acknowledge that this is the last in our series of highlighting and amplifying the voices of authors. Many of you may have heard already that I have a book coming out next year, Humanity in the Workplace, a framework for developing a human-centered culture, which will come out on June 6th of 2023. And as we were tracking through Hummingbird Hour this year, I really wanted to amplify other authors and celebrate those individuals who have inspired me and are sharing their voice and their stories to make the world a better place. And Mark is also a member of the Hummingbird Humanity team. Mark is the senior business manager at Hummingbird and has been with us for almost a year now, I think, and has added huge value in his time with us. And I'm excited for what's ahead as Mark continues to do great things here. So Mark is a really fantastic and interesting human. His bio is too long for me to read the whole thing right now because he has so many amazing accolades and experiences. But Mark, if you don't know Mark, he's a member of the queer community. He's also Latinx. He's also a person with a disability. And he shares about all of his lived experiences as a way to open doors for others and make the world a better place. So he and I share that passion and that desire and that authenticity. So we'll make sure that you can, if you want to know more about Mark, check out hummingbirdhumanity.com, click on our team. You can read Mark's full bio there of all the amazing things he's done. But without further ado, enough from me. Mark, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Brian, for that introduction. Thank you to Lindsay and the Hummingbird team for all of their work and making this event possible. I want to thank all of you for being here. I see Rodney in the room from my William Patterson connection. I see Molly in the room, my local Atlanta entrepreneur, new colleague, friend, and some of the other people in the room who I appreciate and admire. We're going to start off the conversation, Brian, with a reading from my book, Draft: An Imperfect Collection of Writing. And as promised, 3 live attendees will receive a signed copy of my book. Now, here are the rules for that. One, you have to be following Hummingbird Humanity on Instagram and LinkedIn. So Lindsay will drop the LinkedIn for Hummingbird Humanity, and the Instagram handle is just at Hummingbird Humanity, typical spelling, on Instagram. So you have to be following both accounts on LinkedIn and Instagram for Hummingbird Humanity to receive a signed copy of the book. And I will pick 3 people at random based on today's list of who's attended live. Okay, so that's how you're gonna win a chance to get a signed copy of the book. I'm covering all the shipping costs. It's gonna be at no cost to you, okay? So if you're interested in getting a free signed copy of the book, go ahead and
Mark.
follow. Yes.
Mark, I have to interrupt you. We have so many people here today. Hummingbird's going to sponsor 3 more books, so you can give 6 books away.
Yes, so 6 books total. He just doubled it. So that's
We like to double things here at Hummingbird. We want to change the world. So there you go.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. That's kind of you. So the 6 of you who are attending live, you still have to do the same thing. Follow Hummingbird Humanity on Instagram and follow them on LinkedIn in order to qualify for a chance to win. I'm going to start by reading. Let me tell you a little bit about the book, though, because I think it's really important. This book is a compilation of writings from age 14 through, I think, 27 when I wrote the last essay in the book. And so this is a part 1 or book 1 of a 3-part series that I'm hoping to write throughout my lifetime. The next book that will come out probably sometime in my late 40s is called Revisions, a less imperfect collection of writing. And then the final book, which will probably come out later in life, would be called The Final Copy, a even less imperfect collection of writing. So it's a play on the writing process and the writing series. And this book was self-published. I know Brian and I are going to talk about that later, about why I decided to go the self-publishing route for this particular book. And yeah, so I'm going to read a couple pieces because the theme of this conversation today is about representation at the intersections. And Brian and I strongly believe that representation matters. And the way that we do that is through this work, right? And so I just want to acknowledge that and thank everyone for being here today. And let's get started. And Brian, I'm just going to read these pieces and we can go into the conversation. And each piece,
we need to have our tissues ready. Just checking.
I don't know. It depends if you're an emotional person or not. I don't know. I think you may not be as snappy as me, but I can see you getting a little teary-eyed depending on the topic. So each piece has original artwork, which is really exciting. And if you already have the book with you, I'm on page 10 for those who have copies of the book. Ode to My Body. Forgive me for I have forsaken you, thrown you between the lion's jaw, pushed you to the core of your being until you began to break. Crippled, frail, sore, bruised, stiff, still I adore you. We met at conception, you were premature, given the task of being my keeper, of holding my soul within you, tired, beaten, swollen, limited, exhausted, still I adore you. For without you, I cannot be the dancer. You have given me the facility to live my dreams. I adore you in all of your glory, no matter how worn out you are, no matter how your stomach expands, no matter how your muscle spasms interrupt my sleep. Remember that I adore you, even as I run us both to the ground. I'm also going to go ahead and read another piece. And this piece is actually an essay, so it's an excerpt. I'm on page 25 for those who have the book. It's called From Behind Closed Doors. And this is an excerpt, an essay I wrote about my first therapist, Daisy Rodriguez, from William Patterson University, who has become a very special person in my life. And I'm going to just start reading the first part of the essay. I never knew how powerful it would feel to speak, and how having someone else listen would heal my brokenness. As a Latino, I was taught that speaking about my problems that occurred behind closed doors was not permitted. From a young age, I was taught not to trust individuals such as therapists because therapy was what white people did. And you are no gringo. You don't talk to people about what happened in this house. Suffering in isolation during my first semester in college, I was frequently crying and unable to stop. One day I could not get out of bed. The depression came over me and I became physically ill. That day marked the darkest moment in my transition from high school to college. As I tried to reflect on the lessons taught in my freshman seminar course, I remembered a therapist, a woman who spoke about emotional intelligence, a fellow Latino, Daisy Rodriguez. On November 21, 2010, I reached out to Daisy and began therapy. On that day, I took the first steps in the process of healing and found someone who would truly listen. At first, I never discussed going to therapy with others because I was ashamed. But in time, I learned to embrace it. As an advocate for therapy, I encourage people to seek help and remind them that they are not alone. Daisy had become my sounding board, an ear for all my concerns and an anchor in the midst of the storm. From issues with my mother to breakups, school challenges, and my successes, I had Daisy to share it all with. She was there for me every step of the way, with her objectivity, her affirming nods, and her sincere concern for my well-being. I'm gonna move on to page 55 for those who have the book, paperback. There's some adult language here, so just heads up. Paperback. Some of us don't have the privilege of being stealth, to be stacked on the shelf, of blending in with every hardcover. Sometimes we are paperback, the kind that bends but refuses to break, proclaiming a big fuck you to your binary, to the check in and out process, because our stories still have value, our lives still matter. So stare at us, make your snarky remarks, tell us how we're to blame because we refuse to be the same, to conform, to be put on a shelf, imprisoned by your ideals of normativity. We won't apologize for being seen, for allowing our cover to reflect all of our fears, femme, gay, colors. We'll keep bending gender like a paperback spine that refuses to break. And the final piece I'll share is hashtag his name is Blake. Content warning, there's a mention of suicide here. Your victory generated headlines, but your loss has generated less ink, less outcry, less backlash. You're just another Black guy, another trans life, lost in the pile of news, not worthy of the same attention white trans lives generate, as if your life was less worthy than Lila Alcorn's. I wonder if your name was Tyler, would it make them pay attention? Would they form foundations? Would they stop and listen? Blake, I will always know and speak your name. It was Blake Brockington. It is Blake Brockington. It will always be Blake Brockington. It shall not be erased from our history. Your story will not get lost in misgendered translation. I will not let them add to the isolation you endured in life. His name was Blake. Blake Brockington. Blake Brockington, a king. For those who don't know Blake Brockington, he was the first Black trans guy to win prom king of his high school. I believe it was in North Carolina. And because of his win, he garnered national headlines for becoming the first trans man or trans young adult, young man to win prom king in his high school in the South. And I think the media attention paired with the bullying and the harassment, unfortunately, caused us to lose Blake too early. So thank you for letting me read that, Brian. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Mark, for sharing those beautiful and powerful and emotional stories. I want to read. I didn't read your official bio, but I realized as I was just closed the book here, I want to read this bio for everyone. So I'm just gonna, if you'll indulge me for a moment. Learning to love yourself fully, completely, and without exaggeration or reservation is one of the greatest accomplishments we can aspire to, and few ever truly attain this goal. Mark Travis Rivera has succeeded, although this has taken him years. In a world quick to label and condemn, he was a swirling maelstrom of identities, a poor inner-city Latino kid with cerebral palsy who kissed his first boy at 12 and was clinically depressed by the time he reached college. Others in Rivera's situation would have hidden from the world, hoping it would ignore them. But Rivera chose to meet the world head on, demanding that it accept him as he is. That's really powerful. And that is, I wanted to read it as I was just glancing at that, because Mark, that is what I think of you, is I'm always struck by how confident you are in your body and your identity and how you show up, and that passion and that energy and that love for yourself, I think always comes through, and it comes through in your stories and your messages. So I just want to say thank you for sharing so much of yourself with us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Brian, for that. And yes, I had I self-published this book through Amazon CreateSpace, which when I originally worked for CreateSpace, they were not a subsidy of Amazon. Amazon purchased them and they became Kindle Direct Publishing. And I hired one of their marketers to write the book description because I was just like, I can't be bothered to write another thing for this book. So yeah, thank you to the marketer. I forgot their name. It's been years since they wrote it, but yeah, they wrote that description and it was really helpful for me to have an outsider kind of review the book and then write that description because I wouldn't have been able to frame it that way. So yeah, thank you for reading that. So yeah, anyways, I just want to
Yeah,
say
and Derek apparently has known you for a while and says Mark has literally always been Mark. And I know.
yeah, so Derek and I went to undergrad together at William Patterson, and what Derek probably won't say in a professional setting is that I was such a brat. So I was immature, still loud, but less loud. And I also, and I think you, Brian, have come to know this about me too, is that I have gotten a lot calmer thanks to medication and therapy and a life coach and a psychiatrist and yoga and all these things. But back then when Derek knew me, I was definitely much like that fiery, like spitfire, like we need change now, destroy the whole system, start over. And so was a brat, forget you, Lindsay. But yeah, the idea that like I'm less bratty now and also I'm learning how to navigate with different approaches, right? And I think that you also have been instrumental in helping me navigate that, right, in the professional setting. And really thinking about like when you are a marginalized person and you belong to so many different communities that are historically have been marginalized and misrepresented or underrepresented, you often have to feel like you have to fight because you're fighting every community you belong to.
Mm.
You're fighting the Latinx community to accept you as a queer, gender nonconforming person. You're fighting the disabled community to accept you as a person of color with a disability. You're fighting the LGBT community to accept you as a person of color who's also disabled, right? And so you're constantly fighting the community that you belong to be fully embraced and accepted. And the premise of my TEDx talk, Embracing Yourself, Embracing Your Potential, which was inspired by my workshop at Harvard in 2013, was really about, I didn't learn how to unlock my potential for success until I learned to embrace every aspect of who I was, right? There is no fragmenting me. The world does that enough for me. I don't do it to myself anymore. So there's no hierarchy. I'm not more Latinx than I'm not any less crippled than I am brown or any less brown than I am queer or gender nonconforming. I'm all of those things at totality. And I often say one of my catchphrases is that, I exist, live, and will die at the intersection of all of those identities combined.
Yeah, we can't pick part of us off or put it away in the closet. It comes with us wherever we go. I really I always sort of appreciate your authenticity and your honesty and openness. I know it took me a long time to embrace all of those different intersectional aspects of me, which includes my privileged identities as well as my marginalized identities, and understanding how those all are at play inside me and how others perceive me and engage with me. And how did you find such confidence to be able to be so authentic in this world? Because the world isn't always very kind.
Yeah, I always tell people authenticity is a daily choice, right? Every day I wake up and choose myself, right? And some days are easier than others. Today happens to be an easy day. I'm talking to Brian. I'm just gonna fully show up as myself, right? There have been times, depending on where I'm at, if I'm traveling for a speaking engagement or a personal trip, where I have to be mindful of how I look like, right? Because of how I dress, or because it can put my life at risk. I have been spat on, I've been followed, I've been harassed, I've been threatened, right? Which is common for gender nonconforming and trans and non-binary people in this country. And so I want to acknowledge that like authenticity is a daily choice. And whether I wear makeup or not, whether I'm wearing a dress or not, heels or not, doesn't mean I'm not being myself. It just means that I am choosing out of safety to diminish or try to diminish aspects of my identity so that I can be safe. Now, here's what I will tell you. Even when I'm not wearing makeup and I consider wearing something bummy, which I don't, I do wear bummy clothes here and there.
I don't believe it, Mark. We'll look for the pictures.
It does happen. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And I'll still get misgendered. It's just like, I was just flying to California last week, and this awesome Vietnamese guy who was used to living in the Bay Area, was going back to actually he's going back to Vietnam to visit family. And he said, ma'am, let me help you with your suitcase. And he picked up my carry-on and put it away from me. And I normally have no problem doing that. You know, I have upper body strength, I can do that. But the fact that he called me a ma'am, and I was wearing like a regular long sleeve shirt and some yoga pants. And I was just so confused that he thought I was a woman. But again, I had no makeup on, you know, to me, yoga pants and a t-shirt is pretty basic. So I just was confused that he thought I was a man, but I said, thank you for, you know, sometimes being misgendered, it works out in my favor, but other times it could be violence. It can be, you know, a physical, I mean, I've been pushed towards the tracks on trains. You know, I've had people follow me in the street for blocks, you know, and so, you know, it's wild to me that, you know, this happens. But that's the reality, right? So authenticity for me is a daily choice, and it's a daily choice I make because I always tell my mother this, because my mother really is really afraid for my safety. And I said to her, I'd rather die living my truth than live a lie. And so the day that my life ends, the day that I no longer am in this physical plane, I would have left on my terms.
It's really powerful. I'd rather die living my truth than live a lie.
Yeah. Because are you really living if you're living a lie?
Mm.
And not to shame anyone, right? We all have to come to that conclusion ourselves. Embracing your authenticity, embracing your truth is definitely a journey. But what I've come to realize is that, and for some people, they discover their truth later in life, and that's totally okay. We all have our journeys. But I knew my truth when I was young. I came out at 14, right? There's no reason to digress now. And so I want to recognize and acknowledge that for some people, they don't have the freedom or the privilege that I have of being out, right? And that in this case it is a privilege, right? Because my career hasn't suffered because of it. I haven't gotten any less. I mean, I'm sure there's been opportunities that I've been passed over for many different reasons. But I'm not hurting, right? Like my career is not hurting. I'm college educated. I'm the first one in my family to graduate college, first one to graduate high school, the first one to have an entrepreneur career, you know, as a creative storyteller. I have international presence without having a passport, you know, like all of that are privileges, right? And I think that all stems from the fact that I show up authentically. And and I think I'm very polarized. I think there's no in between with me. Either you like me or you don't like me, but at least you know what you get, right? I am who I am. And so I really respect people who say, you know what, you're a little too extra for me, or you're too loud, or you're too activist for me, right? And I get that. And there are people who really appreciate me and like me, and I appreciate that too. But you know, I just want to be myself. And I don't want to get to the end of my life and wish I would have loved harder, loved myself harder, loved others harder. I don't want to get to the end of my life and regret not living it fully.
You know, as I'm hearing you talk and thinking about the excerpts you shared from your book, you know, I'm curious about, you know, there, you have so many stories that you choose to share, and some of these are your stories, and some of these are stories that happen in the world around you that have moved you and have meant something to you. How did you go through the journey of writing those stories, picking those stories? It feels like it would be hard to choose all the ones that are going to fit in here. And by the way, they don't seem imperfect to me, but it's, you know, they're powerful. So how did you get here?
Yeah, so I have to thank my editor, Lori Lorenstein, who I met when I was in grad school. I did a semester at Wilkes University low residency creative writing program. And I met Lori through that, and we became really connected. And even though I dropped out of the program, I said, hey, I want to work on self-publishing this collection. Will you serve as my editor? She said yes. I was fortunate she said yes. And we worked together, and together we kind of pared down like the pieces that we thought were more powerful or more compelling for this collection. And so she had me take things out, and she helped me edit it, and she helped me create the order of the collection. So she helped me kind of put it together. She's also a writer herself, a published author. She has her second book coming out, her third book, but the second book of this series coming out in October. So I'm excited for Lori. Thank you for Lori for all her help. But yeah, so her help was really instrumental. And this book also includes a foreword by my friend, Dr. Alicia Nicole Harris, who is a well-renowned poet. And Alicia is just a brilliant person who wrote a beautiful foreword. And so when I read her forward, I cried real tears. I still get emotional when I read it now because it was so it captured the true essence of what I was hoping to accomplish with this book, right? Which that people can read it and see themselves reflected. Growing up, I didn't see myself in the media. I didn't see myself, on stages speaking, and not all of myself, right? And let me clarify. Noah's Ark had a hypermasculine, sexualized Puerto Rican man named Ricky, right? And then you saw some queer characters who were white. I mean, one of the first time I ever saw queer representation on TV was the movie Mrs. Doubtfire, which is why, as a child, I was obsessed with that movie and would watch it every day after school. And my favorite scene was always the salon scene with Robin Williams' character's brother, who is perceived to be a queer man, who transformed into the old woman. And they sing that song. I'm not a good singer, so I'm not about to embarrass myself. But like matchmaker, make me a match. And they transform Robin Williams' character into this older woman. And that was the first time that I saw gender and queerness kind of represented on the screen. And of course, I saw Tu Wong Fu, which I think I was too young to watch at the time. I don't know how I saw that movie. But Alicia also thinks I'm very teachy. So I would also agree with that statement. But yeah, and so that's kind of how the book kind of came about. And the idea of putting it as a compilation was really, a good collection is really a compilation. I also didn't have the time to write a whole book from scratch. I'm actually working on trying to get a book agent to help me create my book proposal for my memoir, Crippled But Not Broken, a manifesto for those who have fallen down, which I'm hoping to be able to get published to a major publishing house. So my memoir, I'm not trying to self-publish. I'm trying to get that published to a major publishing house. So yeah, I'm working on that as on the back end. But yeah, and so that's kind of how this collection kind of came about. And the idea of doing it as a series just made sense to me because, it was, and the reason why I called it Imperfect Collection is because so much of my perfectionism was stopping me from writing the book or putting this book together. And Brian, you just wrote a book. I know you're also going through this in your own journey. I'm a recovering perfectionist. And it was because of the work of Dr. Brene Brown and Oprah Winfrey and other thought leaders and leaders that I was able to get this book out there. And, I think that's really important to mention that it's a journey.
Yeah. Well, remind me afterwards. I have someone I can introduce you to on that book journey of yours.
Yeah,
Yes. So of course, happy to make introductions. I've been fortunate that so many people have helped me on my journey, and I'm happy to pass it on. So we'll connect on that after Hummingbird Hour because we talk every day, of course. So
we do.
we'll make that happen. What I love is that I'm hearing is that you're both wanting to share your story and be a champion for your own journey while also asking for help. And I think that's something that so many of us struggle with, is asking for help and reaching out to say, hey, this isn't what I can do. I want to ask for help. And so I'm curious, how have people been an ally for you? What are a couple of the moments where it's been really powerful for someone who's made a difference and showing up for you and standing by you on your journey?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people I can name, right? Because I come as one in this conversation with you today, but every version I've ever been is because someone held my hand through my growth journey, right? They have pulled out the version of me that I've become today, right? And so there's obviously my family, my immediate family, both negative and positive ways. The woman who made college possible for me, because believe it or not, I was a 2.0 high school graduate, barely made it out of high school. The year I entered high school is rough for anyone, but when you're at a performing arts high school, when your major is creative writing and you minor in dance, there's a lot of like, you're not good enough syndrome. I was the only boy in my creative writing cohort. I was the only disabled dancer in my dance cohort. My half brother was murdered my first year of high school. And so I was going through a lot of, I had just come out the closet, right? Like his death kind of propelled me out of the closet to live my truth because I was afraid that I would die in the inner city of Paterson, New Jersey, before I got to live my truth fully. So that's kind of what propelled me to come out the closet. And so, Carmen Ortiz, which she's now the executive director of academic achievement at William Patterson University, my alma mater. She was the only EOF program, Education Opportunity Fund program in the state of New Jersey to accept me into their program. Everyone else declined me because my grades were so low. So Carmen interviewed me twice. And the only reason why she even interviewed me is because other people at the EOF office at William Patterson, Betty, who knew my guidance counselor at Rosa Parks, said, you have to read his file again. I know his grades are low, but look at his file. Like, you need to talk to this person. And she said, the only reason why I'm interviewing you is because Betty kept insisting I talk to you because your
Mhm.
grades are not impressive. She was like, and the only thing that's saving you right now is that you have a pretty decent SAT score. And I was like, okay, let me tell you my story. And so I made her a promise that I would make college a priority, that I would excel, that I would get good grades. And my EOF semester, I got a 4.0. And every semester, for the most part, I think with the exception of one, I got a 3.0 or higher. And so I graduated, I ended up doing a cumulative GPA of like 3.2 when I graduated college. My major GPA in women's and gender studies was 3.4 or 3.5. I was in 2 honor societies. I won all these awards on campus. And so I went from being the barely graduated high school student to an award-winning choreographer, storyteller, speaker, writer. So people like Carmen is really important. I think about people like my first supervisor, Rosanna John Jay, when she said to me, I don't know what gender nonconforming means. This is back in 2015. She said, but I will support you. Just be your authentic self. People can't do their best work if they can't be authentic. And she did. She stood by my side every time I wore a dress and needed to use a different bathroom or a gender neutral bathroom. She made it possible for me to succeed at John Jay. I think about people like you and Nick, right? I report directly to Nick and report to you on certain things. And at first when you told me I'd be reporting to Nick, I was like, a straight white man. Okay, let's see how this goes. I wasn't sure, to be honest. And I continue, and I'm not just saying it because Nick is on the call, because he's not always on the Hummingbird Hour call, so I'm not saying this to blow smoke. But I've learned more from Nick as a supervisor, probably than anyone that I've worked with before, and definitely the only white straight man that I have come to trust over my 31 years of life. Because Nick is a straight shooter, no pun on the straight part, but he's a straight shooter. He says what he means what he says. And he challenges me to dig deeper, right? And I think that because of who I am and where I come from, having a white straight supervisor would have caused me to go into defense mode and be really defensive. And so he has garnered my trust and allows me to put my wall down and be um to learn from him in a really powerful way. And so I think that he's become a surprisingly positive influence in regards to when I first joined Hummingbird to now. I would have never thought that a straight white man would be someone that I would learn so much from in such a short amount of time. And you all know some of you know my professional story about being laid off this time last year, and how Hummingbird became a nest for me to recover and regroup from that experience. And as the anniversary of that layoff comes up, I feel a lot of anxiety for me and my colleagues who were impacted by that layoff. And so I felt like I've been spending the last year in fight mode. And then I joined another organization recently that was Shopping Remain Nameless, that wasn't the right fit. And I tried I spoke to Brian, I spoke to you, Tino, about how do I make this work? And I tried, and you said, try to make it work. If it doesn't work, we'll figure it out. And that's exactly what we did, right? And so I think that there are so many people who have made my career possible, right? And so because a boy from Patterson, New Jersey should not be on billboards, should not have a TEDx talk, should not have a book, should not have a podcast, should not have a dance company that he ran for 10 years. There are so many reasons why someone like me from where I come from shouldn't make it to where I am, right? But I am because of the people who rallied around me, right? And so I focus a lot on self-love in this book, but over the last couple of years, I've been focusing a lot on communal love, because we don't talk enough about communal love. We talk a lot about romantic love and self-love, but not communal love. And I think maybe because I'm Latino, I grew up in a family where we're very communal, we all rallied around each other, we were all struggling together, we were all succeeding together. And there's pressure that comes with that, right? About being the first in your family to do something and being a generational curse breaker. But there's also power in knowing that I belong to a community of strong feminine women. I grew up in a single mother household. The matriarch of my matriarch, my grandmother, my abuela, she's a strong woman, right? She said to me, your only obligation is to yourself and your freedom. And when the matriarch of a Puerto Rican family tells you, move out of your mother's home, go start your next life, you've done the best you could for your mother. That is not common. In the Latino community, we have this Virgin Mary complex with our mothers, right? And so the ability to hear the matriarch tell me, your only obligation is to yourself and your freedom. She didn't say forget where you come from. She didn't say forget your people, forget your family, forget your friends. She said your only obligation is to yourself and your freedom, because she knew that if I was tending to myself, if I was tending to my own freedom, that everyone around me would get even more free.
Yeah, I hear in that, choose you, bet on you. What, you know, there's different versions of that. And, you know, I know the journey I'm on at
Be
Hummingbird is
you,
yeah.
right? Be
I'm
you.
like, I chose to do this because I wanted to be able to be myself in the work that I get to do, that I love doing. And I decided to bet on myself. And I know that that's a big part of your story. So you've just shared about so many people and experiences and moments where people stood by you, helped you, supported you, protected you, were an ally for you. And then, as we know, you shared this earlier, you decided to do the self-publishing route, go the self-publishing route for this book. Why did you make that choice? Because I'm sure that lots of publishers are going to want the Mark Travis Rivera story. I have no doubt about that. Why did you choose to go the self-publishing route?
I think many reasons why marginalized writers do it, because we don't know how to play the publishing game. I mean, this was like 5 years ago when this book came out, right? And so this is like 7 years ago when I started working on it. So back then, I didn't really know a lot of people in the industry the way I do now, right? My network wasn't as big. I don't have as many followers on social media, which is always the myth that people had, that you have to have a ton of social media followers to be able to sell your book. And I didn't want that, because we know the publishing world is very white, and we know that opportunities for marginalized writers are far and few in between. And so I wanted to make sure that I allowed myself permission to be represented in this way, so other Latinx people, other disabled people, other queer people could see themselves in these pages or in the artwork and get the courage to tell their story. Right. And that's why I went that route. Now for my memoir, no, I have big aspirations for my memoir. Like, I'm going to get a major publishing house. It's going to be a 6-figure deal. I'm going to have an interview with Oprah. Like, I'm manifesting that for my life, right? Because I know that this story, my story, is not unique, right? But to be a representation of these particular intersections is so critically important. And often disabled people of color are pushed to the margin and desexualized. Most disabled people are desexualized regardless of your race. But when you're a person of color, which is interesting, right? Because as a queer person, I'm hypersexualized. As a person of color, I am seen as like aggressive and or dangerous to some people. As a disabled person, I'm viewed as frail, needing to be infantilized, desexualized, right? And so all of those competing socializations of my identities make no sense to certain people when they meet me. They're like, you're all of these things. I don't know how to make sense. I don't know how to wrap my head around this, right? Because I don't allow people to negate any of my identities for their comfort. Right.
You were sharing earlier, I meant to comment on this, that sometimes you choose to, I'm going to use the word mute aspects of your identity, but it's not for their comfort, it's for your safety or for your comfort. So, and I wish for a world where you never have to do that.
Right.
Also respect that you say that, like, that's not about them, it's about me, what's right for me.
It's right for my safety, right? Because yes, I'd rather live in my truth than die living a lie. But if I can avoid dying sooner than I have to, then I'm going to try to avoid dying sooner than I have to. And I think that for many queer people and trans people and gender nonconforming people, that is the reality of our lives. Black trans women continue to kill a disproportionate rate in this country and around the world. You know, life expectancy for a Black trans woman is 35 years old, right? For a trans woman of color, in general, the life expectancy is I think less than 40 years old, which means that because I identify as femme and I'm gender nonconforming, even though I identify as a man, in the next 4 years, God forbid, or universe forbid, I could be killed, right? Right?
Yeah.
I may not make it to my 40s, and I recognize that. And because of that, I have this urgency to get this memoir done, because my biggest fear, and I'm forgetting who said this quote, I don't want to live with untold stories inside of me. I mean, I don't want to die with untold stories inside of me. I don't want me to die and never having told this story. And the memoir, Crippled But Not Broken, you know, crippled, I mean, my mom gave birth to me at 5.5 months. I weighed 1 pound in 1991. So medicine wasn't as advanced as it is today. Physically speaking, I should not be alive today. You and I should not be able to have this conversation today. Right? And from the moment I was born, my birthing circumstances taught me what it meant to be resilient to the bone. Right? The second subtitle of that memoir that I'm working on, A Manifesto for Those Who Have Fallen Down, I literally fell down every single day over my own 2 feet because of my disability.
Mm.
Falling into lockers and getting concussions, falling in gym, falling in physical therapy, falling when I was trying to ride a bike, falling when I was learning how to walk, falling when I was dancing because I have bad balance, right? And so there is and even though my disability isn't as a parent anymore, I deal with it. I deal with it every day. The muscle spasms, the tightness, the swelling of the feet, the excruciating pain when I'm doing physical activity or standing for too long or sitting for too long or walking for too far, right? And so this idea around telling having a memoir, a manifesto around how my disability has informed every other aspect of my life, I think is critically important because we don't hear that narrative when it comes to disability stories, disabled stories. And we definitely don't hear about disabled people of color who are also queer and gender conforming, who are living the life that I live. And I am not the exception to the rule, right? I am because there's a lineage of people across my communities who have fought to give me the rights that I have today, who have made the American with Disabilities Act possible, who made the Pride Revolution, the Pride marches and all that and Stonewall possible, right? For the migrants from Puerto Rico who migrated to the US to help in the war, to help with the economy when things were going to crap in this country, right? The fact that my ancestors have been US citizens since the 1900s as Puerto Ricans because of the Jones Act, but our main island, our island is being ravaged by political discourse, by hurricanes and natural disasters, and the government, both the US government and Puerto Rican government, are failing our people, right? And I want to mention that because, not to get too political here, Puerto Rico is dealing with another hurricane, Hurricane Fiona, right? They were still recovering from Hurricane Maria 5 years ago, right? And no matter where you fall on the political spectrum of whether they should have statehood or independence, until they're no longer US territory, I believe the US has an obligation to the people of Puerto Rico, right? And beyond throwing paper toilet or paper towels, in the crowd, right? And so we need to talk more about that, right? We need to talk about what's happening in the US territories around the world and what's happening in Puerto Rico. And, the fact that I haven't been back to Puerto Rico as an adult because it's not safe for me as a queer and non-conforming person. Femicide is on the rise, violence against women or femme people is on the rise in Puerto Rico. Queer and trans antagonism is on the rise in Puerto Rico, right? But there are activists in Puerto Rico actively working to improve conditions for the LGBTQ community and women, right? And so I plan on making my first trip to Puerto Rico as an adult next April for my birthday. A pre-birthday, early birthday trip with my sister and her friends. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I am afraid. I am afraid about how I'm gonna show up, right? But I know I need to show up. And I'm gonna be connecting with some organizations there to do a workshop and bring some copies of my book to give to the people in Puerto Rico so they can see what's possible, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
that visibility is so important, and it makes it, you and I both know how much of a difference it makes in the lives, and we get to hear those stories, those people who reach out to us privately to say thank you for being you. It helps me know that someday I can choose to share my story and to be more open, which is really powerful. We're talking a lot about allyship, so whether it's others who helped you or how you, by being visible, being your authentic self, how you're helping others. I want to pivot to the self-care part of this, because I also understand, like, we give so much of ourselves in this work, and it can be raw and it can be emotionally draining and it can be sometimes scary. The scare for physical harm for me is less than the average person in many ways. For those of you who don't know, I'm 6'6" tall and almost 300 pounds, so I'm probably just okay in most situations. But that doesn't mean that I haven't been called a faggot walking down the street, because I have, and those moments where it still feels scary even at my size. And that just gives me empathy for this experiences of others who have less, that don't have that physical presence I do. So we talked about how you have moments where you choose to mute yourself, mute part of your identity for safety, but how do you take care of yourself? And there's a question here I want to make sure I ask, because through their voice, Mark, do you find that when writing about deeply emotional or mentally emotionally challenging events, that you can write about them in the moment? Or do you have to find time and space to process and reflect before you put words on paper, and to give yourself some time to heal afterwards? How do you manage that, whether it's writing or sharing? How do you manage the self-care part of being so open, authentic?
Yeah, I'm every day is a new lesson for me, right? And so there are certain things that I have decided I no longer will talk about regarding my personal life. Like I'm not going to share everything on social media. I was just talking to you and Lindsay prior to this event today about some updates on my personal life that I'm just not ready to share on social media yet. It doesn't mean it's less important or not authentically of me to not share that, but there are certain things I'm learning as I mature with age. There are some things that I need to hold secret,
Mhm.
right? um Especially when it comes to like family and friends and lovers who are not in the public eye, right? Like I chose this life. They chose to love me. They didn't choose to live this life with me in that way. And so I need to be mindful that when I tell stories, I'm not just telling my story, right? I'm telling everyone's story that's connected to my story. And so I need to be mindful about how I share it, when I share it, why I share it. In terms to Molly's question around the writing process, I haven't written much since this book came out. I've been featured a contributing author for a new book called Crisis and Care by Adrian Shanker, which is the queer activist response to COVID-19. I have a chapter called Spiraling into Self-Love, the Wilderness, the Journey, and COVID-19, or Self-Love and COVID-19. And so that's available. Crisis and Care is available. I wrote an essay for Gibney, which is for their dance journal called Imagining, which also just came out this month. And so I have written a few pieces, but I haven't done much writing book-wise since we're writing this first collection. And so my memoir will be the first time that I write a book from the ground up. And I'm really nervous. And I think one of the things I paused on therapy recently because I feel like I've been in therapy for 12 years. I needed a break from therapy. I need to kind of find the next right therapist. But I have a life coach and a psychiatrist. And I think once I start writing this memoir for real, like once I start getting this book proposal done, I'm gonna need to find a therapist who sees therapists, because I feel like because I do a lot of life coaching and I do a lot of self-help books and I've been in therapy for so long, I'm finding that I'm having a hard time finding a therapist who's not surprised by my level of awareness or amused by my intellect. And so I don't need them to be amused or surprised by my awareness. I need them to see past that and get to the core of the issues I'm talking about with them. So I need to see a therapist who sees therapists, even though I'm not a trained therapist. And I'm thinking that when I
I
write
feel
the
like I should introduce you to my therapist, Mark.
okay, great.
We'll cover that as well.
Yeah, and so talking about like when I start writing this memoir, I think I'm gonna have to go back to therapy because it's gonna trigger a lot in me. And I think that one of the things I've come to realize is I can write anything I want in real time or share certain things. Um, but I'm learning that like there are certain things I haven't talked much about publicly yet, which will come out in this memoir. It has to, right? For the memoir to really resonate and to be authentic, it has to be told. And this will be the first time I'm writing about it in a very direct way. And I think that I'm scared for that conversation because it's gonna hurt people.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's the only way to get really free, right? To free ourselves of the shame and the need to be perfect and the need to be um, you know, I don't know, whatever you want to successful in life, you just have to let go of all the things that have harmed you. I think about my former organization that laid me off last year this time. I was hoarding anger towards that person. One, because they're a shitty person, but two, because I think that they're so inauthentic that it's just, and I in my last job that I just left recently, one of my coworkers there said to me, Mark, it's don't dim your light because they can't handle the glare.
Hmm.
And I had a bunch of white women just tell me that I wasn't good enough or that I wasn't ready or they were uncomfortable with me being in a position of leadership. Even though I met all the criteria on paper. And I think what's interesting is that there are so many people, white and non-white alike, who are always telling you what you're worth or what you're not worth. And what I've come to realize, Brian, I think you have really helped me with this, is that my worth is not up for debate. My worthiness is non-negotiable. You may not think I'm worth it, but I know what I'm worth. And so I am not going to negotiate or debate you on my worthiness. We are all innately worthy because we are human beings, right? It is our, to quote Brene Brown, it's our birthright for love, belonging, and connection. We need it. There's a reason why the moment we are conceived, we are connected to our mother's umbilical cord. We are social species. We need connection, right? And I'm no longer connecting with organizations or people or friends or lovers or family who do not recognize and validate that worth, right? And that's been hard for me, because to leave a full-time job making the most money I've ever made in my career to go to pivot back to Hummingbird Humanity in a different capacity, that was pretty bold of me, right? But I learned last year this time that staying in an environment that does not see your worth on the onset could be dangerous. Because what happens is you start to hustle for your worthiness, try to prove to them that you're worth it, and then they will still discard you, right? And so the moment 3 months into the new, 6 weeks into the new role, I already reached out to you about, hey, I need an exit plan. Let's figure this out, right? Because I already knew the writing on the wall. And so for anyone who's listening to this conversation, professionally or personally, know your worth. Know that you are worthy, right? And as the more experiences you get, the more professional and personal experiences you get, the more that worth goes up. It never decreases, right? Yesterday's price is not today's price, honey. Right. And so I want to acknowledge that and make sure that people really understand that, because I think that's really, really important to recognize the need to know that your worth is non-negotiable.
I love that, Mark. And I think it's good to say, I want to say it again, your worth is non-negotiable. I also love, don't dim your light because they can't handle the glare. And that's really powerful. And I want to keep the focus on your story. I'll just share though that for those listening, because I know sometimes what people perceive is I'm a white cisgender man, so these haven't been my experiences, and I have absolutely stayed in workplaces where I was being harmed. And it impacted my mental health, and I have lots of stories that I'll share in another time in another place, but it's what you've just said really resonates for me personally as well. Of, I wish I could go back and tell that Brian, run, leave, you're worth it.
Right.
Don't stay in a place that's not good for you.
But Brian, you say that to yourself now when it comes to clients.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
I learned.
So you learned, and it makes you a better leader, right? Because you've learned from those experiences. And so I think that, especially in the workplace, when we talk about developing human-centered workplaces and cultures of belonging and safety, psychological safety, it is imperative that you recognize that what connects us, there's far more that connects us than separates us. And I know that the recent political discourse is leaning on our disconnections or things that disconnect us from each other. You and I have more in common than we recognize, right? We're both queer. We both have mental health struggles. I'm 5'4", you're 6'6". There's a big height difference there. I can't wait to get a picture with you in person and show that physically in a photo. But this idea that our mental health and our queerness are directly correlated, right? Because so many queer people are struggling with their mental health, with suicide ideation. We are at higher risk for HIV infections or exposure, right? And so there's so many other things that are happening in our life, right? And so I think that's really important to mention, is that although on the surface, you and I can be more different in regards to age and race and height and backgrounds, there are things that connect us. And I think that part of recognizing the humanity in others is recognizing the humanity within them that's also within us, ourselves.
Yeah,
right.
I absolutely agree. And thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I do think that's a message that has gotten way too lost in recent years. And I don't want to minimize the realities of systemic oppression by
that happens
on the rainbow land of we're all more more alike than we are different.
And that's not toxic positivity here when I say that. I generally mean that the one thing that we all have in common as professionals is that we know failure. Because if you dare greatly in your career, you will fail. If you are creative, you will fail. If you are innovative, you will fail, right? So regardless of your economic status, your education status, your gender, your sexuality, your race, your disability, or your national origin, you will experience failure in some sort if you are trying to honor the calling of your life.
Yeah.
And I know we're out of time, but I want to take a point of team privilege here. Say, I'm going to stick around for a few minutes. I know Brian's super busy, but I'm going to stick around for a few minutes if anyone has a question for us, because we didn't get to do Q&A.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll do a formal wrap up for the video, and then we can say goodbye for anyone who has to jump, and then we'll stick around for a few minutes. First of all, I just want to say thanks to everyone for being with us today, for listening. Mark, thank you so much for your authenticity, your vulnerability, your passion, your confidence, your humor, your honesty. I learn from you every day, and I have no doubt that everyone here learned from you as well. How do people find you and follow you, and what are your what final words you'd like to offer everyone?
Final words. Thank you all for being here. Molly, Dr. Gray, Dr. Keenling, Obella, somebody, Derek, Krista. Thank you all so much for being here. What I will say is you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Mark, M-A-R-K, Trav, T-R-A-V as in Victor, Rivera. Or you can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Mark Travis Rivera. Lindsay put all that stuff in the chat. You can also reach out to me via the Hummingbird website. So feel free to connect with me through there. So I'm going to, should we stop the recording, Brian?
Well, I'll just wrap up and say for anyone who has to jump, thank you again for being with us. Join us on Hummingbird Humanities social media channels. And until next time, hosted by Mark Travis Rivera, Hummingbird Hour in a month. Until next time, stay safe and be well. Thanks, everyone. And we can